Hello. Hi. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll wait just a little bit more to give others time to join in before I continue. So I hope you're having a great day today. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining and thank you for waiting. Okay, just had to figure out my camera problems. So again, I'll just wait a little bit more before I continue to give others time to join, if you don't mind. So for the meantime, if you have any questions or anything you have in mind, just ask away. Okay. So today, well, tomorrow is International Women's Day. So um, the campaign this year is about ending the bias. So break the bias is the official hashtag for International Women's Day. Of course, we don't have to celebrate it only for one day. We can celebrate the whole month. So International Women's Day, again, break the bias. So they have this position holding like this, the symbol. So if you saw the event that we have today, the photo is a woman doing this pose. So that's the official pose for breaking the bias. So that's why we're going to do that today. But at the same time also, we get to mix skin tones. So of course, there's a multitude of skin tones, um, different kinds, different varieties, different undertones. Skin tones are just so varied. So that's also the nice thing about painting skin tones, painting people, is you really get to experiment your color mixing to get the skin tones that you're looking for. So this will be fun. I find it fun. I hope you too. So the thing is, before you even paint or anything, you could just have fun with trying to mix various skin tones so that you can actually make a record of it if you want and have like a swatch or a chart of all the different skin tones that you can mix using the colors that you already have. So you don't have to purchase so many colors. You just need to have several different kinds that you can use also for different things, not just for skin tones. So let's try to do that today. Let's try to mix different kinds of skin tones. But of course, for this exercise, I'm going to mix for this reference photo that I have. But I'll also show you other ways, other mixtures for mixing skin tones. Okay, so that's why I have different palettes here. But we actually are going to have our very own palette, specifically watercolor palette, specifically for mixing, specifically with skin tone colors. So I'll just slide a little bit and get it. Okay, so this is our palette. This is not out yet, but it will be soon. So this is from our Virtuoso set. So this is professional grade, artist grade, but the price is amazing. But anyway, this is Soriso, so it looks like this. So if you've seen previous videos, you've seen me use our up-and-coming new watercolor palettes, and this is one of them, one of four, and this is Soriso. So as you can see here, it's a person, so it's specifically skin tones, but I won't be using this today because we actually want to mix our own with what we already have. So this is just, if you do a lot of skin tone painting, this will come in really handy. And these are the colors it has. As you can see, lots of warm tones, lots of different kinds of red, yellow ochre, which is really very useful for skin tone mixing, yellow ochre. So if you have yellow ochre, that's already a big deal. And then several browns as well, burnt sienna and umber, because burnt sienna is more on the red side and umber is more on the cooler side, deeper side of brown. But if you have also olive green, this is also nice for the undertones that you need for painting the skin if you like to do the cooler undertones. So it has many beautiful colors, but for now we'll use colors that we would normally have in our limited palettes. Okay, so I have my favorite palette here, which is the Classico. Okay, so Classico already has fabulous colors. Here it is. Here is the swatch. So it has the yellows, it has red, it has the browns, so a warmer brown and a cooler brown, and you also have blues and to mix with your yellows to create a more subdued green, just like olive green. So you can already mix some of the colors that Sorriso already has if you like to stick with the limited palette. Okay, so let's go and flip it down to my messy desk. Okay, so forgive my messy desk. All right, let me just put this down and flip it about. Okay, so stick with me. All right, so I'm gonna flip it now so that you are viewing it the right side up. Okay, so here is I have my iPad because I have the photo here of okay, so this is our reference photo. So this is copyright free. I got this copyright free, so no issues. I also be after our no problem, Joe. I just started, so don't worry. Okay, so here is the reference photo. After this live, I will also be sharing the sketch that I did of this. So I will share it so you guys can just trace over it. You know, I'm sure not everyone has the patience to draw people, human figures. So I will share the sketch after. Sorry, I wasn't able to share it before. But after the live, I will share the sketch I did. So you can just save it, and then if you have an iPad, you can just, you know, increase the brightness, and then you can just trace over it, or you can print it out, you know, and if you have a light box, you can just trace over it, or during the daytime on a window, on a bright window, that can also be your free light box. Okay, so this is the reference photo, and I also share this along with the sketch after, so you can take your time when you do this and no pressure. So I'll just set this to the side. At least you've seen it now. Okay. All right. So I've sketched it previously before we started, but I'll just fix the eyes because it's a bit weird. So let me just quickly fix the eyes because it's not even. Okay, so let me just even this out. So it's not level. So when you sketch the eyes, the face like that, try to draw a line just to make sure that everything is leveling and not one eye is a bit higher or lower than the other, because it's gonna look weird like earlier. Okay, so this is more even the shape. Okay, so this is where I take the most time, eyes, because once you get it right, it's such a huge difference in your drawing. Or if you get it wrong, it makes a huge difference. Okay, so anyway, you can still make corrections. It's just a sketch, so nothing is set in stone yet. Okay, so here is the sketch. So it's just really a very light sketch because again we're doing this in watercolor. Okay, so let's see. Okay, before we even paint this, let's just experiment on skin tones. Okay, so let me just get the paper. Okay, so I'll get some brushes. I'm going to use softer brushes now. Alright. Okay, so let's try mixing skin tones with the colors that we have. Okay, so I will be using from 2 sets. This is earlier you saw the Classico, and now I have my Vista palette. Okay, so this one has the yellow ochre, which I want. Okay, so I have the Indian yellow, which is really very warm, and yellow ochre, which is really across different mediums. You want this color for skin tone mixing, whether in acrylic, oil, or watercolor. It really is very helpful. Okay, and then the greens, you can just tone it down with red, and you will get a more subdued green. Okay, so let's start with, let's mix 2 colors. Okay, let me just put my list here so I can actually figure out my colors. Okay, so let's use the 2 colors from Classico, the Indian Red and Raw Umber. So these 2 colors right beside each other. Okay, so Indian Red with Raw Umber. Okay, so I'm just going to put a dash. So this is what I do. I put the 2 colors separate just so I remember which is which before I mix them. Okay, and then I'm just going to wet this spot and then apply them both. Okay, so when you mix them both, you get this deep skin tone color. Okay, let me just zoom in just so you can see much nearer. Okay, and let me focus my lights. Okay, so I hope that's brighter. All right, so here you get your deep brown, but with a slightly warm undertone. Okay, so some skin tones have warmer undertones, some skin tones have cooler undertones, so you will just have to observe each person that you're going to try to paint, what kind of skin tone they have, so what are the undertones. Okay, wow, you really are good at finding deals, Joe. Awesome. Okay, so next let's try burnt umber. Okay, or let's go with raw umber. Okay, raw umber. And then Pyrrole red. Okay, so I hope you can see it. If you have questions, just ask away. And then let's do a dash. And then let's mix red with this. Okay, so with red, try to do it, add slowly, because again, red is very strong and it can easily overwhelm other colors that you mix with it. So if you mix the 2, raw umber and Pyrrole red, the 2 that you get are quite similar. So if you need a darker skin tone with a warm undertone, then you can use, if you have Indian red or maybe some kind of other red like cadmium red or Pyrrole red, then you get this deep brown with a warm undertone. Okay, now let's try burnt umber with yellow. Oh, I mean raw umber. I keep saying burnt umber. Okay, raw umber. Okay, with let's try this yellow, Hansa yellow. So try to mix your browns with your reds, your yellows. and try to see what you can get with them. So this is really a lot of experimentation so that you can actually see for yourself with the colors that you have what you can make. Okay, so I think that's a bit more yellow than I should have put, so let me just... Okay, so this one is a bit weird. You don't really, I don't think you'd want this skin tone, but again, this is how you find out. Okay, next let's do your Indian red, the yellow, same yellow, your warm yellow, Hansa, let's put in some Indian red. So you can also try to mix it on the side, water down, so you can see much better if you water it down what it looks like. Okay, so you can try to do this as well, because when it's more concentrated, it also looks a bit different when it's watered down. Let's just get some here. Let's spread it. Okay, so try to make a mix of it that's really deep, and try to water it down and see what it looks like. Because here you will get to appreciate better. This one I think is great for my kind of skin tone. Okay, so now let's go with Indian red. You can also use burnt sienna for this. Okay, so if you have burnt sienna, that will also be good. So Indian red with yellow ochre right here. Okay, so before we do any painting, I just want you to see how we can go through the various skin tones and experiment and find ones that are to our preference. Because when you have your reference photo, you don't really need to follow it exactly. You can, you know, mix skin tones according to what you want to paint. So you don't have to follow the exact skin tone if it's not a portrait that's been, you know, ordered, or, you know, if you want to mix your own, create your own skin tone, go ahead. Okay, that's how I paint. I have a reference photo for just really to help with the proportions and such, but when it comes to skin tone, I go with what I want. Okay, so let's go with raw umber and yellow ochre. Okay, so this is a different kind of brown. So again, depending on what you prefer, you can really mix so many. Okay, so now let's try mixing 3 colors. Indian red, raw umber, and yellow ochre. Okay, let's add a bit more yellow. So again, a different skin tone. Okay, and for undertones, you just layer it. For example, you did your first light layer, and then your next layer, you just layer your green over on top. So let's use our which one? Okay, let's use permanent green light. Let's mix it with Indian red. and then you get a kind of olive green, which you can totally use for your midtones, which is usually a cooler color. Okay, so here is how I got my olive green, by mixing my permanent green light with Indian red. So if you have a bright green that you need some toning down, you add its opposite color, which is red. So try to mix your greens with drops of red and see what kind of different green you get. In my case, permanent green light with Indian red gave me this olive green, which will be awesome for midtones if you like to paint midtones with cooler colors. Okay, so as you can see, we've mixed so many different skin tones, and you can keep experimenting with this as much as you can with the colors that you already have. So if you have burnt sienna, if you have burnt umber or raw umber, and if you have several yellows and reds, you can already mix a multitude of skin tones. All right, so I hope that was clear. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you'll try it out for yourself, because you really don't know what you're gonna get until you try it out yourself, even if I tell you. But the fun is really trying out yourself and like seeing how they look like, and you get to experiment with them yourself. Okay, so now we can go to our painting. Okay, so let me just fold this so it doesn't take up space. So once you've created your mixtures, then you already have a chart. You know, you can have this on the side. Of course, label it with the colors you used, so you will actually know what you used, and you don't have to search for it and swatch it all. But if you have this, then it's already a big help every time you need to paint skin tones. All right, so let me just get my sketch and let's get on with painting. Okay, so I just really took the time so you can actually mix this yourself and have fun with it. It's a separate thing that's fun. You don't even have to paint it. You can just keep experimenting. Okay, so I'll set this on over here. It's out of picture, but you can always rewind later on. Okay, so let me just get my okay. Okay, everything's ready. All right, so I'll just use my number 5 or number 7. Sorry, the details are erased. I've used this so much, so I'm not sure. But this is from the Turner collection. So this is a squirrel synthetic mix. So it's the squirrel hair is soft, but since it has synthetic hairs mixed in, it has sort of spring, so it's soft enough for the soft applications, but it bounces back because of the synthetic. So I love this brush. So as you can see, no more labels. I've rubbed it off with so much usage. Okay, so when I paint my skin tones, I always start, of course, with the lightest mix. Okay, so I like this mix that I did earlier. I'm quite fond of warmer mixes of skin tones. That's how I prefer to paint. So again, it's up to you which kind of skin tone you prefer, your preference is, and you go with that. In my case, this is it, and it's Indian red mixed with Hansa yellow. So I'll already mix here in the palette. I'll just prepare enough mix. Okay, so I'm gonna get Indian red. Okay, with Hansa yellow. And then it's good to have paper on the side, extra paper. It doesn't have to be watercolor paper, but it can be totally. But just so you can actually test it out before you use it on your painting. Okay, so I'm gonna test it out. And maybe I think it's the yellow, so I'm just gonna add a dash of Indian red. So again, anything with red and some blues, they can be quite strong, so add them in small increments. Sometimes you add too much red and you just need to keep adding more of the other color, and you end up with too much. So when you add red, do it slowly. Okay, so I like it. This one earlier was a bit too yellow. This one is more of the golden color that I was looking for. Okay, so I'm going to use it now. And paint all over. So I'm going to start at the edge and then I'm going to water it down right here because there's some highlight, so I don't want to cover that with a dark wash. Okay, so around the hairline it's usually darker, so you can start there and then rinse off your brush and using just clean water from the edge, pull the color a bit down so you get a lighter wash. So from a dark wash it becomes lighter but seamlessly. Okay, and then I'm gonna start from the edges and then move inward, and again rinse my brush every time I see there's a highlight, like here on the forehead, on the nose, and here in the inner part of the cheeks. So with watercolor you want to paint negatively because the white is your paper. So those that you want lighter, you need to use less pigment. Okay, so again, I'm going to start at the edges. And then rinse my brush, use water to pull it inwards. So I'm just keeping the center part of the face lighter because I can always add the shadows later on for the nose area and such. But for now, I'm starting with the edges and moving inwards. I feel like this is much easier to control. So if you feel like if there's too much pigment, rinse your brush and use it to wipe off the color to lift it. When everything is still wet, you can still make corrections quite easily. But of course, keep in mind that some colors are quite staining, so some colors will be more difficult to lift off. But when it's still wet, it's still so much easier than waiting for it to dry before making your corrections. Okay, so I keep going back and forth to my water because, again, for the parts that I need lightening, I just rinse off the pigment from my brush and then use clean water to pull the color here inwards. But since my brush already has water, it will be diluted and I will have a much lighter color. Okay, so when you test out your colors, like what I did earlier, you do a concentrated mix of it, a deeper, and you also try to swatch it out lighter so you can actually see the color as how you would layer it from lighter to darker. Okay, and now I have my first layer. So for the face, so this is what it looks like. Already, I like it. So I'll probably do one or two more layers and it'll be done. So this isn't an overly overworked piece. This will be so much simpler, you know, just not as realistic as the photo, but just, you know, getting all the right values to make it look three-dimensional enough. Okay, so let's go with the neck. Again, the same thing. So this part is shadowed, is more shadowed, especially under the chin, because of course the light is here and underneath the chin will be more shadowed. And again, rinse the brush and use clean water from your brush to pull the color downwards. Okay, so again, this is just your first layer. So if you feel like it's too light, don't worry. You'll still add more to it later. Take your time. Okay, so the light is from here, so there's more shadow here. Okay, so your first layer is just setting all the lighter colors. Okay, so here it's spread to the face, so I'm just going to keep removing it until it stops spreading. Okay, so the trick here is, okay, I muddied this up. The trick is to wait for each layer to dry. Okay, so you'll be able to control your layers and your shadows much easier. So you can also hasten it using a blow dryer, definitely, which I will do so that you don't have to wait forever. Okay, so it's pretty dry. Okay, so this is a 140-pound or 300 GSM paper. So it's also much forgiving with all the brushwork that you need to do. So that's the nice thing about thicker paper, is that it won't get damaged easily, and it's so much easier to make corrections, and much easier all around. And also with better paper, when you do your layers, it doesn't easily lift the layers underneath, which you really don't like, because when you're getting better with your techniques, you're going to be doing more layers and layer on top of each other. So with much cheaper paper, the thing about it is the layers underneath get easily lifted. So what you've worked on under before can easily be damaged by your succeeding layers. So that's the thing. Okay, so now I'm going to do all the skin tones, so which we also have with the hands. Okay, so again, this is a step-by-step, so don't stress out. So just look at your reference photo and see where the deepest areas are, and that's where you drop your paint first. And then rinse your brush, use clean water, and lift it. Pull the color downwards to the lighter areas. So already you're setting up your values in place, so it will be much easier as you keep doing your layers. So I'm going to spread this all over the fingers. Just a really pale first layer. And on the other side as well. It's much shadowed here. Remember, the light is here, so underneath here will be heavily shadowed. Again, not to worry, I will share the photo and also my sketch after, if you want to work on the same image that I'm working on now. Okay, again, rinse the brush. So it's just going back and forth to your water. So watercolor is really a lot of water control, rinsing, going back, lifting, mixing your colors previously. So you really try to set up your colors in advance so that it will give you time to correct mixtures that you thought would work, but actually they don't exactly. So you're planning for everything in advance. Okay, so I have set up my basic values. So just really setting up your first layer where the darkest parts are, and then once it's dry, you can layer on your next layers. Okay, so this is it. So already you can see, just with the first layer, you can already see the blocking of the skin tones. Okay, so there you go. Face is dry. I've dried it earlier, so now I can layer on my next layers. So again, it's up to you if you want to use a cool mid-tone. So let's you can do that, or you can just use warm colors all around. Again, this is depending on your painting preference. So let's try it out with layering my mixture, but now let's make it a bit deeper. So I'm going to mix a more pigmented mixture here on the side. And again, test it out first so you can actually gauge. Again, it's a bit too yellow. So a dab of red, Indian red. Okay, so this is more to my liking. Again, just really very slight difference, but I can see it. Okay. So now with a more concentrated mix, I'm going to work on the cheeks. So just like the technique that I did earlier, I'll apply the deeper mixture where it's deepest, and then rinse my brush, and then use water to pull the color. So if you feel like it's too dark, again, rinse your brush and lift it. Lift the color out. Then I'm going to add more. And because it's already wet, your mixture will slowly, ever so slowly, move outwards. So it's going to give you a softer edge. This time, I'm just really controlling the spread with my brush. If I feel like it's not moving in the direction that I like, I'm just going to lift off a little bit here and there. And while everything is still wet, it's just so much easier. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in even more so you can even see it much closer. Okay, just let me know if you have any questions, ask away. So again, don't be too married to your reference photo. Okay, for me, really, my reference photos are just my guide to more or less the proportions rather than really copying them. Unless, of course, it's a portrait. So if it's a portrait, then of course I have to do my best to make it look like the person, right? But otherwise, if it's your own personal creative work, you can totally, do whatever you want. Okay, so I've already done the cheek part where there's a darker section here going in. So you would think that the whole part would be dark, but then some parts are suddenly a bit lighter, like down here, and that's because of reflected light. So it can reflect from the clothes, from her hand, from anywhere. So some parts will suddenly have a pop of lighter section where you would expect it to be all dark. So that's what happens. Okay, so which is great if you have a reference photo, because it really helps you see things where suddenly there's some reflected light, and it will be able to guide you on how to place it on your painting. Okay, so this is this part. Now I'm going to add on the forehead. So I'm already using a much deeper, a much more darker value of the same mixture that I earlier used for the first layer. So it's the same mixture. I'm just really layering so I can, control it better. Adding shadows here where the hair gives the area some shadow, and leaving a part of the forehead with a highlight. So I'm going to do the nose later, because that requires more finesse, more time, and more patience, so that it doesn't look like it's too harsh or too hard. Okay, so remember, we're painting skin, and we actually want it to look like it's soft, like how skin should be, right? So we want to go with what we want skin to look like. So that's why I really prefer to work in layers and have more patience when I'm working with skin, because I wanted to have that quality, like what we want to see with skin. Okay, so I like it. And we are 1/3 of the way there with skin tones. As you can see, it's really layer by layer, part by part, so work in sections. And you know, it really helps if you use good paper, thick paper, because it's so much more forgiving. Okay, so sometimes if you feel like it's so hard, maybe try to use a better paper and see the difference. Okay, so this part is dry, so I can work on that as well. So I'll start with the nose. So again, the light is here, so there will be more shadow on this side of the nose. Okay, oh, thank you. I hope you try it out. You guys can really do this. As you can see, I'm working in sections, and you can definitely do this. Just take your time. Okay, so again, that's my trick. I place down the color, and then I rinse my brush and use clean water, not dripping, just my wet brush, to pull the color just to soften how it spreads. And you get to put in your shadows, your highlights, and it gives you a much warmer, much softer feel. Okay, so again, if you don't want to see lines after painting everything, then before starting any painting, erase those sketch lines as much as you can and just leave enough for you to be able to see where you're supposed to paint in the details. Because after you've painted everything in, you won't be able to lift it off with your eraser once you've painted over it. It's there, it's set. So do everything even before you start painting. Okay, so I've put in the nose, and now I'm just lifting off some paint on the edges, just using the tip of my brush. Again, just to even soften the shadowing, so it's not like a dark mark right there that's just gonna ruin the nice shape of the nose area of the bridge. And again, if you want it darker, remember you can always layer on later on once the previous layer has dried. So just keep layering until you get what you want. So don't be impatient. Okay, so just have the patience to work on it slowly and just keep layering until you get what you want. Just like with sketching, you know, you keep shading until you get the value that you're looking for. Just layering and layering. So that is much easier than darkening it too much and now having to lift everything off. So again, I'm putting in the shadows and then lifting the sides so that it's not too harsh. Again, you don't want any harsh lines because that's going to age your subject very, very quickly. So whether in sketching or painting, if you add too many hard lines on a subject that isn't old, especially children, it will age them quite quickly. And you don't want that, especially if you're painting children. So the trick is not to use any hard lines. Okay, so I've done the other side. I'm going to add just a bit of a shadowing here on the other side, but not too much because this is where the light is. So this side of the nose is much lighter, but it will still need some shadowing to form the shape of the nose. So try to use a brush with a really nice fine tip because you will need it for tinier details, especially if you're not painting on a big piece of a paper. So that's why this brush is a favorite, because it's good for washes, and then it's also quite useful for fine details without having to switch around. Okay, so here's my nose. I'll wait for it to dry before I add the nostrils later on, because if I add it now while everything is still wet, it will spread all around, which I don't want. I want it to just stay within the nostril area. So I'm going to wait for that area, this area of the nose, to dry before I add the darkest part, which are the nostrils. Okay, so far I like my nose. Again, it doesn't have to be overly detailed like the photo, but just really getting the major shapes and values in. It's already going to make it look realistic. Okay, so now let's go to the eye part. Okay, so I'm going to mix some raw umber with my lamp black. I don't want to use plain black because sometimes it just makes it too dead. So I'm just going to mix these two colors to create my deep black that I need for the eyes and the shape above. Okay, so I'm going to prepare a little bit here on the side. In this part, you can already switch to a much smaller brush to help you out, so that you don't go overboard. You can also mix brown with the deep blue to get like a kind of black if you don't want to use black. Okay, so let me just get my fine line set. Okay, so since I'm working on a much smaller scale, I'm going to use brushes from the fine line, just so I can control this so much better. Okay, so I have this really tiny brush right here. I'm going to get them two. So this is, okay, let's see, 2/0 round and 5/0 round. So very small, which will really come in handy for these details, which you don't want to be too thick. Okay, so I'm going to start with a 2/0 round. You can test it out again on your paper before you commit to your actual work and see if it's small enough. Okay, I think I'm going to try with the even smaller one, the 5/0 round. So it's very small. So it's just best if you use your finer brushes for this, for the eyes and lashes and such. So I'm going to try to do the smallest that I can, so it can be really quite fine, as you can see here. So I like it because I can control it and I can just layer. Oh, really? Yeah, and then you can, another way is really to try to use also the cooler midtones, but for now I'm keeping it much easier with just, you know, just warm colors, but definitely you can use cooler midtones. We'll do that in future works, but for now, with just one mixture, you can already create all the values. Okay, so let's do the eyes. I'm just going to line the eyes, the shape of the eyes, lightly. Again, it's much better to start lighter, because you can always darken it by adding another layer later on, but it's so much harder to correct your mistakes once you've put it in too dark. Okay, don't forget to leave the highlight, leave the paper white, or later on you'd have to add white gouache or acrylic or your pen to add the highlights in. Up to you. In my case, if I can, I would love to just paint around it negatively and just leave the white of the paper. Okay, so I'm doing the lower lash line much lighter. Because the lower lash line, the lashes are much, the top lashes are much denser than the lower. Okay, so I'm just starting with the shape of the eyes. Okay, I like it. And now I can add the eyelid on top. I'm going to use my skin tone color. Just do that. And again, soften the edges. Okay, so just, there you go. So now you have the first eye. And then wait for those layers to dry before you add the lashes. Otherwise, they're going to bleed with each other, and you're not going to have, you know, those nice sharp lashes. Okay, so let's do the other eye first so that it gives this other eye time to dry. Okay, so take your time with this. Try to make the shape similar. Try to make sure that the eyes are level with each other. Don't worry if it's not perfect. You can just keep doing this and you'll get the hang of it. Sometimes I have finished works with just like, OMG, the eyes are just a little bit not level. It happens. Okay, so that's why I want you to take your time so that no regrets. Like me. Okay, so again, watered down mixture for the lower lashes. Then fix the shape where you can. Alright. So sometimes my hand is shaking a bit when I've overused it, so it's a challenge. But in this case, if your hand is shaking too much, then I suggest using a much bigger paper, so then your subject is much bigger, so it's not so hard on you to create the fine lines. So my hand is shaking a bit right now. That's why I really switch brushes and use this much smaller brush, so that I can, even though my hand is shaking, at least the lines will stay smaller. Okay, I'm gonna add extra shadow right here at the corner. So this is really a lot of layering. I'm going to darken slightly the lash line here. Okay, so remember, don't make it too dark, the under eye, because it's gonna look odd. It's like she did some eyeliner all around. Okay, so this part, the eye is already dry, so now I can add the lashes using the smallest brush from the fine line set. So I really love this brush. It's literally my brush for painting in lashes, whether in acrylic, oil, or watercolor. Okay, so this is a raw umber with black mix. Okay, I'm just going to add more mixture. Okay, so the lashes at the outermost, they're more thicker and they curve outwards. See, like this. And then as it moves inward, it's going to start like this, and then as it goes past the middle section of the eye, it starts going in the opposite direction. So be careful when you do the lashes. They don't just go in one direction. They will change directions. So that's what I do. From the outermost, going outwards like this, like the opposite C curve. And then as it moves inward, it straightens. And then as it goes past the middle, it curves the other way. Okay, and don't overdo it. It's always nice to just have a little bit of it, and you can just add later on, rather than doing too much and it looks like she has like false lashes on that are just, you know, the kinds that performers use for their shows. But of course, if that's what you're going for, totally, you can do that. And then I'm just going to darken again. The eye line. Okay, so now I have the eyes plotted out. Okay, so I'm going to use brown again mixed with black for the eyebrows. Okay, so let's start with a much softer mix. So again, this will be layering. So let's start layering in the lashes. The eyebrows. So I'm doing strokes. I'm stroking in the hair. So I'm doing this in layers. I'm applying one layer in one go, and then I can just add more if I feel like it needs more thickening. So this way you can control how the lashes look. And again, depending on the look that you're going for, you can layer as much as you want or as little. So if you're going for sparser lashes, then do it slowly, take your time so that you don't go overboard. Okay, and now I have my lashes and my eyebrows in. I'm going to add the nostrils. Everything is dry there, so it's safe to do this now. And I'm using the same brush just so I can control my strokes much better and not end up with a too huge nostril. Okay, so I'm still debating if I want to add the lower lashes, so I will, but with a much watered down mix. I'll just add a few hair on the edges, just very little, and very light mix. Okay, and now let's go for the lips. Okay, so for the lips, let's go with a pinkish tone. Okay, let's change brushes. I'm going to use I think this is number 5 or number 3 round brush. Okay, so let's try with our Indian red. And there's some white here. Let's add some white. Okay, again, swatch it, try it out if you like it. Okay, so I like this color. It has a pinkish tone, but very subdued. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just really going to erase this a bit so it's not too harsh. So I chose to remove the teeth. The original photo has teeth, but I opted not to have that. Having teeth on your painting is another different challenge. So I'm going for a more natural skin lip color here. I think I might have had too much coffee. Okay, so again, I'm doing my color pooling because the inner part of the lip has some highlight on it. from the light and just softening the edges. So you can even change the shape of the lip that you're working on. If you want it to be a fuller lip, a wider lip, totally, you can do that. And again, don't worry, if it's too light, you can always add more layers later on. Okay, so have patience to work on things layer by layer. Okay, so the face is almost finished, really. So let's now start with finishing the skin on the neck. So this is a much darker area under the chin. So I like to use this method. It's quite easy. Just really applying color where it's darkest and then pulling it towards where you want it to be lighter. So here I don't mind the strokes because it's just like giving a what looks like the lines of the neck, which we all have. So I don't mind that. Okay, so I'm quite happy with this. Okay, so now once everything is dry, the face is dry and such, then you can work on the hair. But today I'm just really going to focus on the skin tones, on the woman, because you know what? You can have fun with the hair. It doesn't have to be realistic hair. You can make this mermaid hair. You can make this, you know, like a fantasy hair. So, but the skin tones, you just, you know, you just know how to mix them yourself. Use the mixtures that you prefer. As you can see, so many different skin tones. I went for this, which is Indian red with Hansa yellow. This one is also nice. But these are all various skin tones that you can really play around with. Okay, so let's just finish the hands. Because again, the clothing, the hair, have fun with it. You can make this whichever way you want. Okay, so for the hands, I'm again referring to my reference photo for the shadows. So some shadows here where the fingers are spaced. Okay, the space between the fingers will definitely have the shadows. Okay, so as you can see, I'm quite just starting with laying in the first layer, the lightest mixture, and then doing my color pulling, applying it to the areas where it's darkest and then pulling it towards the lighter areas. And I was able to do this whole thing just with that technique. So you can totally do this. While all the paint is still wet, you can do that technique. And for the edge of the fingers, I'll also add just slight shadow. Because where they meet, where they overlap each other, they will have shadowing. So remember, you just really want to make sure that the skin has that effect that it's soft, as skin should be. Whether it's young skin, old skin, they're all soft. Oh, okay, I'm glad it's an informative session. I hope you guys try this out. You can really do this. And not to worry, again, just to repeat, I'm going to share the sketch of this so you can just trace it and you can focus more on the skin tones and painting the skin tones. And then, you know, later on you can always learn to to sketch people. But for now, you can at least play around with painting skin tones, which can actually be very fun because you can just really go crazy with, you know, trying out your color mixtures and just keeping a copy of the mixes that you've made, you know, what you liked. We all have our own preferences when we're painting. We have our various styles. You can even try to paint in monotone. So this is like monotone because it's really one mixture in just varying values, varying intensities. Okay, so I'm really focusing on the divisions between the fingers, shadowing here and there, and it'll start to look like a hand. So we don't have to go overboard with all the wrinkles and all the lines, just enough that it doesn't look too flat. So that's really what we're aiming for. And you can do this by working in layers. So if you feel like somewhere is too light, then you can always add another layer. Just wait for the previous layer to somewhat dry so it doesn't get muddied or just spread around where you don't want to spread. Especially for the parts where you want to have a proper edge, like the nostrils earlier and the eyes, the lashes. So here again, just adding shadows and layers, lifting the parts where I just really put too much. And then there's also going to be some shadowing here at the cuff, and then under as well. Okay, and now we go to the other hand. So really, nothing extreme, guys. So I really hope you try this out so you'll discover how fun it is painting people. Because myself, I love to paint humans. I'm fond of painting people because I like painting skin tones, and I have my own preferences. As you can see, I chose this one. I go for the warmer mixtures. So you can have your own preferences as well, and you will discover that once you play around with skin tones, and you'll someday get to discover your own likes and dislikes and go-tos. And then I'm going to soften the edge now. Again, unless you see a hard edge, just like what I said when drawing faces and such, don't put a hard line or a hard shadow. Try to soften the edges. So if there's no hard edge, don't put a hard edge because it will really make it look weird or age your subject. So even when I paint older people with lines on their faces, you don't have to draw every line because you don't really see it so much. They're not, unless you're so close to them. So just suggestive lines here and there is enough. And you have to be very, very careful with lines, with adding lines, especially when you're painting young subjects, like babies and children. So with hands, just make sure the lengths of the fingers are correct. Some suggestive shadowing. Sometimes you just need suggestive marks, and the human eye just takes care of everything else. So you can have broken lines, and really the viewer's eye will take care of it. That's the magic of having the broken lines, which I often use a lot because it ends up looking so much better than having all the lines just so stark. So some parts will have harder edges. If you see that, like shadows that are just down here, for example, because this is really, the light is here, it's really covered. You can, of course, make it darker. And I'm also going to make this part darker just to separate the upper part with the thumb, which is down there. But not too much. Again, just a suggestive line is enough. And don't forget the cuff. And there you have it. So we have a woman with her arms crossed. And guys, I really want you to have fun with everything else. Have fun with the hair. Again, you don't have to make this so realistic. You can have fun with the hair, which I'm still debating if I want to do like hair with stuff in it, like maybe florals or leaves and such, even the clothing, even the background. But at least you got to see my how-tos of how to do the skin tone mixing. And this is what I end up with. I'm just going to add now to the mouth, the line, the middle line, which is the most shadowed part of the mouth. So I'm going with, okay, I'm going to switch brushes so it doesn't become a too dark line with Indian red. And then I'm just going to draw the line. So the deepest part is the center and the edges at the corners. So that's the part with the deepest shadows. And I'm not going to line the whole thing with one line weight. So again, the corners of the mouth and the center. And just soften the other lines in between here and here. That way it doesn't look so harsh. Okay, so let me just add a bit of smile line here. But again, don't line it, just soft shadowing is enough. Try not to make any hard lines. That is the first thing that I had to learn in school, because I really, used too many hard lines and it really did not look so good. So that's just practice, okay? Don't worry. The more often that you do it, then the faster that you will get used to, eliminating lines that you don't really need to put in. All right, and there you have it. Okay, so this is our woman with her arms crossed. Remember, this is for International Women's Day, which is on March 8th, and the campaign or the motto now is break the bias. So this is for a future where everybody is equal with each other, no discrimination, and then we can all be equal together. And this is the pose, arms crossed, and that's a symbol for break the bias. So I hope you try this out, and this is for International Women's Day. And if you do, please share your work. And if you have any questions when you share your work, like things that you want my comments on, my help, just ask away, okay? So we are all here to learn. And I hope I was able to teach you how to, try to mix different skin tones with just your browns and reds and yellows in your own palettes that you already have, and even how to create your olive green or chromium oxide kind of green that is good for midtones if you want to move on to midtones in the future. All right, so let me just flip this around, and I can say goodbye to you guys properly. Okay, so thank you for joining me and for trying to see what how my process is when I do skin tones, even with just one kind of mixture. In my case, it was Indian red with Hansa yellow. So just really different values of the same mixture. You can already create this fully rendered, fully, colored woman, and it looks three-dimensional, which is what we're going for. So just really layering. So with layering, with patience, and just keep trying, you can do it. Okay, so when we end this in this event, I'll be sharing the sketch that you can use, and also the reference photo if you want to use the same. Okay, thanks for joining me, guys. I hope you learned something. I hope you'll try it out, and don't forget to share your work if you do. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you next one. Bye.